Every immortal food explained. Every food you buy has an expiration date. Milk lasts a week, bread lasts 3 days, fish lasts overnight. But there are foods that don't spoil. Ever. Not in a year, not in a decade, not in 1,000 years. Archaeologists have opened Egyptian tombs sealed for 3 millennia and found jars of a food inside. Still edible. 14 immortal foods. From the honey pulled out of pyramids to the vinegar that predates the Roman Empire. This is every immortal food explained. 1. Honey. Honey is the only food known to science that never spoils. In 2015, archaeologists working in the tomb of King Tutankhamun's era in Egypt opened a sealed clay jar and found honey inside. It was over 3,000 years old. It was still edible. The reason honey never spoils comes down to chemistry. It contains almost no water. Around 17% moisture, too little for bacteria or fungi to survive in. It is naturally acidic, with a pH between 3 and 4.5. And bees add an enzyme called glucose oxidase during production, which converts glucose into hydrogen peroxide inside the honey, the same compound used in wound disinfectants. Water, acid, and hydrogen peroxide together create an environment where nothing biological can grow. Left sealed and dry, honey will outlast the container it's stored in, the shelf it sits on, and every human who ever tasted it. Raw honey may crystallize over time. Gentle warming restores it. The food itself is unchanged. 2. Salt. Salt is not just a preservative. It is itself immortal. Pure sodium chloride is a mineral. It has no organic components. There is nothing in it that can decompose. A grain of salt on your kitchen counter today is chemically identical to a grain of salt buried in the Wieliczka salt mine in Poland 800 years ago, and to a grain crystallized from a Precambrian sea 3 billion years ago. Ancient civilizations built entire economies around it. Roman soldiers were sometimes paid partially in salt, the origin of the word salary. The Silk Road traded salt across continents. The word salaried and the word salad both trace back to sal, the Latin for salt. Modern table salt contains added iodine and anti-caking agents that can degrade over years. Pure sea salt or Himalayan rock salt has no such additives. Stored dry, either can sit in a jar for centuries and remain identical to the day it was harvested. 3. White rice. White rice, stored properly, lasts up to 30 years. The reason is milling. Brown rice contains the natural oils of the bran layer, which oxidize and go rancid within a year or two. White rice has the bran removed. What remains is starch, protein, and trace minerals, none of which spoil on their own if kept dry and sealed away from oxygen and pests. Government emergency food storage programs, military rations, and Mormon long-term food storage traditions all depend on white rice as a foundational staple. Sealed in mylar bags with oxygen absorbers, white rice has been documented to remain edible and nutritionally intact for more than 3 decades. Sushi rice, jasmine, basmati, arborio, the variety doesn't matter. What matters is that the bran and germ are removed. Once they are, time stops moving for the grain. 4. Dried beans. Dried beans, stored dry and sealed, have been documented to remain viable for over a century. The oldest documented cultivated bean seed to successfully germinate and produce a plant was found in an archaeological dig in the American Southwest. It was estimated at over 1,500 years old, and it grew when planted. For cooking purposes, beans older than a few years take longer to soften and lose some flavor, but they remain safe to eat and nutritionally intact. Kidney beans, black beans, pinto beans, chickpeas, lentils all follow the same principle. Dry, dark, oxygen-free storage removes almost all of the conditions any decomposing organism needs. The Aztec and Maya civilizations built agricultural systems around bean storage that lasted through multi-year droughts. The technology has not fundamentally changed since. It just works. 5. White vinegar. White vinegar is essentially immortal. It is a 5% solution of acetic acid in water. Acetic acid is a preservative. It is why vinegar is used to preserve other foods. Nothing biological can survive in it. The oldest evidence of vinegar production dates to Babylonian times, around 3000 BCE. Ancient Chinese vinegar production began over 3,000 years ago. Roman soldiers carried it as a drink called posca, vinegar mixed with water, which stayed drinkable across long military campaigns because nothing could grow in it. Bottled white vinegar has no expiration date because there is no meaningful degradation. It may lose some sharpness or aroma over decades if the seal is broken, but the acetic acid remains stable indefinitely. Balsamic vinegar and other aged vinegars change over time. They intensify, they concentrate, but they don't spoil. 6. Maple syrup. Pure maple syrup, unopened, lasts essentially forever. The sugar concentration is around 66% by weight. That level of sugar makes it osmotically impossible for microorganisms to survive. Any bacterial cell would have water drawn out of it and die. It is the same principle that preserves honey applied to a different sugar. Once opened and exposed to air, maple syrup can develop surface mold over weeks or months in the refrigerator. But the syrup underneath the mold is still safe. Scrape the mold off, bring the syrup to a boil, and rebottle. The tradition of maple sugaring in Vermont and Quebec has passed down this practice for generations. Real maple syrup is graded from golden through very dark, based on the season and boiling time. Pancake syrup, the commercial imitation, is made from corn syrup and artificial flavor. It does spoil. It is not immortal. 7. GHE. Ghee is clarified butter. Butter with the water and milk solids removed. What's left is pure butter fat. In traditional Indian preparation, butter is simmered until the water evaporates and the milk solids sink and are strained off. The remaining fat, if properly prepared and sealed, can last for years at room temperature without refrigeration. Ancient Ayurvedic texts speak of aged ghee. Some references describe ghee aged for 100 years being used medicinally. The reason ghee doesn't spoil is what has been removed. Water is what allows bacteria to grow. Milk proteins are what oxidize and go rancid. Take both away, and pure butterfat is stable. Modern commercial ghee usually carries an expiration date for regulatory reasons. Traditional homemade ghee, sealed in glass jars, has been documented to remain good for over a decade. 8. Sugar. White sugar is another crystalline substance with no water, no protein, no fat. Nothing that can biologically decompose. Sugar hardens over time as it absorbs ambient moisture, but the food itself doesn't spoil. Brown sugar, which contains molasses, can dry out but never goes bad. Both varieties can be softened again by exposure to a slice of bread or a piece of apple in the container. Refined sugar production began in India around 500 BCE. It spread through the Islamic world during the medieval period and was one of the primary commodities of colonial trade, a food whose long shelf life made it ideal for shipping across oceans. A jar of sugar sitting in your pantry today is chemically identical to sugar refined a decade ago, a century ago, and, if your storage is dry, will be identical a century from now. 9. Soy sauce. Soy sauce is essentially fermented seawater with soybeans and wheat added. The salt content is roughly 15 to 18%, high enough to be antibacterial. The fermentation process, which takes 6 months to several years for traditional Japanese shoyu, produces a stable end product where no additional microbial activity is possible. Kikkoman, the largest soy sauce producer in the world, states that unopened soy sauce lasts indefinitely. Once opened and exposed to air, oxidation slowly darkens and dulls the flavor over months, but the sauce remains safe to consume. Chinese soy sauce production predates written records. Japanese shoyu became a distinct product around the 7th century CE. Some Japanese soy sauce breweries, Kikkoman among them, have been operating continuously for over 300 years using yeast cultures passed down through generations. 10. Hard liquor. Distilled spirits, vodka, whiskey, gin, rum, tequila, do not spoil. The alcohol content, typically 40% by volume or higher, prevents microbial growth. Nothing biological survives in that environment. Whiskey and other aged spirits change character over decades if they remain in wooden barrels, but once bottled in glass, the flavor stabilizes and stops evolving. A sealed bottle of whiskey from 1900, if never opened, tastes essentially identical today to the day it was bottled. Beer and wine are not immortal. They have too much water, too much sugar, and too much residual biological activity. Distilled spirits are different. They are one of the few beverages that can be inherited across generations without loss. 11. Cornstarch. Cornstarch is pure carbohydrate powder extracted from corn. No fat, no protein, no water, no biological activity. Stored dry and sealed, cornstarch lasts indefinitely. Home cooks routinely find containers of cornstarch that have sat in a pantry for a decade. It thickens sauces exactly the same as fresh cornstarch off the store shelf. Cornstarch was industrialized in the 1840s in the United States, primarily as a laundry starch, before it moved into cooking. The starch itself is chemically identical to what indigenous American civilizations extracted from corn thousands of years ago. 12. Instant coffee. Freeze-dried instant coffee, sealed and kept dry, lasts effectively forever. The freeze-drying process removes water via sublimation. A vacuum turns ice directly into vapor without ever passing through liquid form. What's left is a solid crystal of dehydrated coffee extract that cannot support any microbial life. Emergency food supplies, military rations, and space missions all use freeze-dried instant coffee for this exact reason. Nescafe sealed jars from decades ago have been opened and tested to still produce a drinkable cup, though the aromatic complexity fades over time. Instant coffee is one of the least respected coffee products in specialty markets. It is also one of the most durable food products ever engineered. 13. Dashi Kombu. Dashi Kombu is dried kelp used to make Japanese soup stock. It's harvested off the coast of Hokkaido and northern Honshu, cured over months, and sold in dried sheets or strips. Dried kombu, kept away from moisture, lasts for years. In traditional Japanese kitchens, high-quality kombu is intentionally aged for 2 to 3 years before use, because the umami compounds concentrate and deepen over time. Some premium producers age kombu for over a decade. The umami compound in kombu, glutamic acid, is stable. It does not degrade. The kelp itself simply darkens and concentrates. What was harvested as fresh green seaweed becomes deeper, richer, and more valuable the longer it sits. 14. Pemmican. Pemmican is a Native American food made from dried lean meat, rendered fat, and sometimes dried berries, pounded together and shaped into cakes. Indigenous peoples across the Great Plains developed pemmican as portable, calorie-dense preservation food. Buffalo meat, dried in strips, ground to powder, and mixed with tallow, sealed in animal skin bags. Documented examples have remained edible for decades. Some accounts describe pemmican that was still usable after over 50 years. The chemistry is the same as most other immortal foods. Water removed, fat sealing out oxygen. Nothing left for bacteria to consume. Pemmican fed the fur trade across North America. Hudson's Bay Company brigades traveled thousands of kilometers on rations that had been made months before departure. It remains one of the most efficient survival foods ever developed. 14 foods that don't spoil. 1 that comes from bees, 2 from crystals, 3 from fermentation, 2 from fat sealing out oxygen, and 1 that has been sitting inside pyramids for 3,000 years. The chemistry is the same across all of them. Remove the water or add enough salt, sugar, acid, or alcohol, and time stops moving. The food in your pantry is not just something you'll eat today. Some of it will still be there long after you're not. Thank you for watching. Foodology has more every week.